yeah, we came from the stars and we came from a dual sun system and we took these ships and we came to Earth, which has been, a big part of my own personal journey, my own integration across lifetimes. When you've been in a journey that's nonstop and every day you're going through life-changing transformational events, a normal day feels very slow. It feels very spacious. It feels like you have endless amounts of time and space to contemplate, to think, to reflect, to work, to create. So very, very thankful. And with our group, we not only activated the chambers and the spaces and opened up these higher dimensional gateways of consciousness and connection to other worlds, but we also grounded it deeply through the body. And all the way to, in the third pyramid, one of the women in our group actually experienced a full-on birthing process.
He didn't become a swordsman, healer, and scientist. No, Adam Apollo remembered that he already was one. His life changed when he realized that his abilities weren't learned, they were remembered from past lifetimes. He grew up fascinated by technology, consciousness, and the unseen forces shaping reality. He was the kind of kid who asked questions that adults couldn't answer. Well, in his latest book entitled Lifetimes, Spiritual Explorations of Earth and Galactic Past Lives, which was published by Sacred Stories, he teaches you how to access your soul memories and reclaim the gifts you've carried through time. In this episode, you'll discover how remembering your past lives can actually reshape your present moment. I'm your host, David Trotter. Welcome to the Awaken Magazine podcast. Adam, it's great to see you again. Great to be with you. How are you doing?
Oh, David, I am fantastic and on the tail end of a massive life-changing adventure across the world.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. I know you've been traveling for several weeks now. Where did you go? Why did you go? And what happened?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine and I decided to cultivate this very tight-knit group of high-level Jedi, so to speak, to adventure through Egypt together. And he called this gathering Prophecy. And let me tell you, it definitely was fulfillment of many prophecies within individual people, within our group, within different kinds of soul lines and experiences through time. We went and had the honor of sort of getting the torch passed from Emily Fletcher's group, where she was leading this incredible group through Egypt as well. And I opened the directions and the magic to help kind of transition the power between the groups. And then we took on the adventure and had all three pyramids for 8 hours overnight. So essentially got to activate each of the pyramids in sequence in the ways that I've figured out and learned how to do this and remembered how to do this after having visited the pyramids and actually done all three pyramids now. I think this was my third or fourth time that I've done all three pyramids in a row like that overnight. And just doing that is, I would say, one of the most profound experiences that you could have in your life. And with our group, we not only activated the chambers and the spaces and opened up these higher dimensional gateways of consciousness and connection to other worlds, but we also grounded it deeply through the body. And all the way to, in the third pyramid, one of the women in our group actually experienced a full-on birthing process in which she was witnessing her body actually birthing through the energetics of this new world template that we've all been seeing and praying around and holding space for. So that was really the beginning of our trip. And then we did a Nile cruise from Aswan to Luxor and celebrated at the Isis temple and cried at the temple at dawn, stood vigil at the Isis gate that's ancient. No one even knows when it was built and constructed, through to experiences at Kom Ombo, which is the Sobek temple, and to this very, very special place where from one of my past lives in Egypt, my father actually built this little temple out in the middle of the desert. And I got to go there and I cried my eyes out as I moved into this space, and I remembered being there. I remembered seeing all the things on the walls, and the beauty was that on the walls in this space, literally, you have the story of my family's origin. And there was Ma'at holding two sons with a planet down in her womb, and then this golden ship with lions and different star beings, different gods and goddesses and beings on this golden ship. And the golden ship is passing through this gateway to another image of Ma'at holding one son and the earth down in her womb. And the hieroglyphics literally read, by the blessings of Horus, we open the stargate and pass between the worlds. And so explicit and so beautifully said. And I know many of that family I have from Egypt in this time. I know that father in this lifetime as well. But it was incredibly powerful and potent to be there and to experience my own memories and resonance in this place, and then also to see how absolutely explicit it was in that temple of saying, yeah, we came from the stars and we came from a dual sun system, and we took these ships and we came to Earth, which has been, a big part of my own personal journey in my own integration across lifetimes. So anyway, I went from there to several other places, the Assyrian, and found new codes around some of the resonance technologies that I've been studying, very explicitly laid out in the walls there, clearer than I'd ever found before. And then was able to go all the way to Mount Sinai, climb Mount Sinai before dawn, and experience sunrise and full moon set on Mount Sinai with Venus rising right before the sun. Absolutely glorious. And dive in the Red Sea and rebirth myself in the Red Sea before catching a flight from Cairo through Dubai and going to Bhutan as part of a special small delegation for the King of Bhutan's birthday, and gathering and experiencing a massive convergence of forces, including, the Prime Minister of India staying in our hotel. Nearly a tenth of the country merged together in one giant stadium to chant and sing and pray around the King's birthday, and to experience this culture that in many ways, I think, from the arts to the building construction to the architecture, actually embodied the same kind of extraordinary integrated spirituality that you see in ancient Egypt. And of course, that's not what Egypt today looks like. It's very different. It's very trashed. It's very there's a lot of lack of consciousness, I would say, in how a lot of the land and the spaces are being held. But here I was in Bhutan, just in the Himalayas above India, and witnessing a culture with the same level of integrative depth of their spiritual tradition as you could find in the ancient temples in Egypt. And what a bridge to make, and what a ley line to lay. And, here I am after integrating all these dragon codes this year, and I'm in the land of the thunder dragon, and I'm being called Niet Druk, the silver dragon, as I'm doing my sacred work there. And it was absolutely profound, and finalized with a 44-hour journey back from Bhutan through Dubai, through Cairo, through London, and back to Denver just the day before yesterday. So
You just landed.
just landed.
Yeah. My goodness. My goodness. You still have some dirt on your forehead from Bhutan, I think. Just a little
Yes. Yes,
dust.
exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. How do you process all of this as you come back to Colorado and you've had all of these magical experiences? Like, how do you integrate these experiences? What does that mean for daily life, right? How do you integrate that into the things that you're doing on a regular basis?
Yeah, well, I think like any great epic life transforming journey, there's a process to integrate it all. And I think that the first wave that usually hits is the sense of, okay, now I need to take inventory for all of the other things I'm doing in my life and my business and my emails and my this and that, and moving into this new house and all of these different facets of just human life, the normal everyday life stuff. And pick up my cat and take care of my cat and make sure he's going to be okay with this dog in this house. And there's just a lot of things that life is entailed. I'm buying my car this week as well, that has been leased for the last couple of years. So taking the inventory of all of that can oftentimes feel overwhelming when you're first kind of returning back to a normal flow and schedule of life. But at the same time, what I notice is that my own consciousness and my own awareness is operating from a different place. I've integrated certain keys, certain facets of my gifts and abilities, and healed new layers of my own soul journey and my karmas, and have accessed levels of awareness in my own planetary guardianship that allow me to return to my life with a new sense of stability, a new sense of patience and care. I feel capable of taking on literally anything. And yeah, when you've been in a journey that's nonstop and every day you're going through life-changing transformational events, a normal day feels very slow. It feels very spacious. It feels like you have endless amounts of time and space to contemplate, to think, to reflect, to work, to create. So I'm very, very thankful. And I feel like I've gone through this initiation, passed my own magical tests, and have come to a more deep and stable resting place in the trust in my own divine nature and being and integrative capacity to be who I am across time.
Hmm. What's fascinating is your new book came out, I think, right before you left or right as you were leaving. And it's entitled Lifetimes Spiritual Explorations of Earth and Galactic Past Lives. And it's part of the Common Sentience series by Sacred Stories. And I want to just start off talking about the book by reading a portion from the very beginning of the book that asks a bunch of questions. And these questions are so fascinating because for those who maybe aren't reflecting on these topics like you are on a daily basis, they're very expansive, right? And so the questions begin with, what if you could remember skills you developed across your past lifetimes? If you've incarnated many times, 5, 10, 100, what kind of library of experiences and abilities have you cultivated? What if you could recall languages you spoke in the past or cultures you were part of, making it easier to embody them now? What if you could remember people you knew in other lifetimes, instantly rekindling the connection, trust, love, and growth you went through together? What if you have already had these types of experiences, but you have not been aware of what is happening? Wow. I mean, that is just so helpful, so expansive, so possibility thinking, right? So, is this possible? I assume you're going to say yes because you wrote the book on it, right? You're asking these questions, but is it possible to do the very things that you're asking about right here?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the story of my life. The journey of my life has been realizing that there are many skills and abilities that have been cultivated over hundreds of years in different lives. Swords was one of the first sort of tools that I picked up that found me maybe more than I found them. And they were given to me at different times. And as I took each kind of blade, each type of sword, I found a different form of movement, a different aspect of myself coming forward, a different personality in a way. And I still feel that when I draw a katana, I'm Tokugawa Tadanaga. When I hold a Celtic broadsword, I am a great man of the Celtic lands, ready to fight for my people. And, different weapons in this way, interestingly for me, have keys to some of these different facets of my being, different aspects of the guardian within me. And then, of course, with people and beloveds. I have some of the most incredible relationships in my life. I feel lucky to say I have not just many friends, but I have many beloveds that I have loved again and again and again across lifetimes. And it's been a massively transformational journey for me to meet them again, to fall in love again, to have these experiences again, and to rekindle that trust and that connection. Because, man, when you have fought for each other and died for each other and loved each other and gone through pain and trauma and transitions with each other a lot across lifetimes, that level of bond is unshakable. There's nothing like it. There really is nothing like it. And there's no way I could build in this life any connection that could be as deep as some of these connections I have with people that I've, in some cases, only known in total time, maybe for a week or like a day in this life. But because I have spent lifetimes with them, the level of connection is as though I spent my entire life with them now. And that is extraordinarily valuable. And beyond those things, the healings of the karmas and the sanskaras, the facing of the pain that I've created and experienced and received, has tempered my soul and my capacity to face challenges in this life. And I find that that my own journey through the difficulties and challenges of everyday life now is so much more graceful than it has ever been. And I do credit a lot of that to my work clearing my karmas and clearing these painful things from the past and restoring more of myself and more of my consciousness. And along with that comes all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, all of these gifts. And people ask me all the time, how do you do all these things that you do? How are you a DJ and a swordsman and a healer and a massage therapist and a tech CEO and a unified physicist and a scientist and a philosopher and all of these pieces of me? And the answer is very simple. I didn't try to be all of these things. I just remembered each of these parts of myself, and I actually practiced and did the work to integrate the memories from those lifetimes so that these aspects of myself come through easily and effortlessly.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch base about the construct of the book, like how it's actually constructed, the vision behind the book, like what's the point of the book. I know you've got more authors that are a part of it than just you. So maybe tell us the vision and like how it's unique compared to other books that people might pick up.
Yeah, it's part of a series that is known as Common Sentience. And the publisher, Sacred Stories Publishing, has been doing this series for some years. And I'm deeply honored to be invited into this series alongside legends like Neil Donald Walsh and Anadea Judith and Freddie Silva, Suzanne Gleesman, and many, many, many others who are incredible authors in this series. And the structure of the series is set up where you get the deep dive into the topic for the first third of the book. And the deep dive often is backed heavily with scientific research and knowledge and studies. And so in this book, I cover the work of Ian Stevenson and many other scientists like him who have done thousands of case studies with past life recall and have shown definitively that children, all the way up sometimes to adults, but mostly children, have memories of prior lifetimes. And when they're able to correlate the prior lifetime to a specific person that's known about, they find that the child has birthmarks where that person had a wound previously, or sometimes will even hurt themselves and actually get a scar in a place that the person in the prior lifetime had a scar, all the way through to experiencing sometimes more challenging things, nightmares and dreams and visions of intense experiences of war, where they were able to remember their battalion and the captain of their group, and all the way to a kid who at this point has become one of the most famous stories, that was able to actually locate his plane in the ocean where it crashed after having had these memories. And his parents didn't believe in any of it. They were very skeptical, and they were kind of freaked out by it for a while. But as he gave more specific names and details, eventually they had to seek out help and actually find people that were willing to study what this kid was experiencing to actually access the truth about his past life and these memories. So the first third of the book, you really get the grounding in this topic that will help you understand it, communicate it, and your aunt, your cousin, your mom, your friend. This book is very well written for anyone in your life that may or may not believe in this kind of stuff, woo-woo stuff, to read and go, wow, I see. And now this actually makes a lot of sense. And it actually makes me realize that I've had some of these moments and I just blew them off at some point in my life. And once you've got that opening, it goes into the second part of the book. And the second part of this series in these books is stories from different guest authors. So we put out a call for stories. In my book, we have about 20 different stories where different people share their past life experiences, the memories they've had, the events that they went through, how it was triggered, what happened, and how they dealt with it. And as you read through these different stories, it really gives you a sense of just how normal this is, and that it's okay, and that everybody has it in a different way. It's not like everybody's cookie cutter same process for remembering, but it gives you an opportunity to really validate some of the experiences you might have had that you haven't accepted yet. And then part 3 of the book is essentially your initial training manual. So it says, this is how you do it. This is how you discern. This is how you can separate archetypal memory, which is, being alive at the same time as a big famous figure, and you think you're them, you think you're Socrates because you remember all these interesting things around the teachings of Socrates in that time period. But that's not exactly the same as having the personal memories and relationships that Socrates had. And so you start to see how you can find your own specific role in your lives, and also realize that you've been connected to amazing teachers and amazing leaders, and at times have been amazing teachers and leaders at different points in time throughout your journey. And then have some of the tools to integrate that and to develop relationships that you may have shared in past lives, and to heal karmas and to release yourself from many of the things that you completed in those lifetimes, and allow yourself to really move on and regain the gifts and the skills from those lifetimes now in this one.
Thank you. One of the things that's fascinating about this whole topic for me, having grown up in a conservative Christian background, been a pastor, the word that is not used very often in the spiritual context anymore is reincarnation, right? It's more talking about past lives. I assume reincarnation probably has just some baggage to it. Maybe people don't use it that much. But I love how you brought up the fact that for most people, I know just like culturally, reincarnation is seen as a system of punishment or reward in some way. And that's what was ingrained in me. And versus you call it a learning engine. And so I'm curious how it's a learning engine. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, when you make mistakes in your life, you learn from those mistakes, and hopefully you learn not to make the same mistakes again, right? And so we know that we are constantly in a process of learning and growing and evolving. And how do we know not to do this or to do that if we haven't had a prior experience that showed us why we shouldn't do that? And this is also why relationships are so important, because as we learn from other people and we listen to other people's journeys and experiences, we also discover things that they went through that we don't have to go through, as long as we take in that lesson and we apply that lesson in our own lives. But now you need to extend that idea, because the reality is that you've learned a lot of different kinds of lessons throughout time and throughout history. And many of the gifts of the lessons that you've learned back then can empower you in unimaginable ways now. It can give you tools, give you insights, give you songs, give you skills, gives you, calligraphy abilities and writing abilities and teaching abilities and knowledge and all of these different things that are really your soul's birthright. They're part of your gifts. And you would probably have a lot more of those gifts a lot longer if you didn't grow up in a society that immediately dismissed these kinds of memories. And we also live in a world where, in some of the places where reincarnation is treated very normally, there often are religious belief systems, such as the caste system, which would suggest, okay, each life you're only going to progress this much and you can't go further than that. And it's designed to sort of keep people at the bottom and people at the top, and justify and validate those positionings, and also not to allow the world to change or life to change that much. And unfortunately, a lot of that structure is more propaganda than it is actual divine wisdom, let's just say, for the soul. Because as I've seen and got to know so many people experiencing different lifetimes, I see that we journey often in ways where at one point we're leaders and we're kings and we're lords, and we screw up, and then we dive back down and we experience ourselves very simple, humble lives, and then you work your way back up. And it's not, and being a king is no higher or better than being a farmer. And in fact, some of your most deep spiritual revelations and growth and experience of yourself might happen in a very simple lifetime, where you spend your life tilling the earth and connecting to the ground and to the land, or, singing to the birds in the forest, or learning how to listen to the herbs and create herbology that you could use to heal your friends and beloveds. So none of these things have a hierarchy in the sense that, by you having more money or more wealth, you're somehow more advanced on the spiritual path. It's not the truth at all. And any great master or avatar will tell you that. But what I do see is that no matter what you experience and when you experience, it is a learning journey. It is an opportunity for growth. And through being a lord and abusing your power, you learn how to not abuse your power. And you realize that having a lot doesn't necessarily mean that you're happier. And having lives where you have almost nothing and experience at times great joy in that, you can realize that happiness and joy isn't about objects, isn't about things. And maybe you spent a life as a monk where you meditated for most of that lifetime and you learned how to find peace in your mind. And now in this life, you find yourself in, normal standard 9 to 5 jobs. And some part of you knows how to retreat into that space of that stillness. Some part of you knows and understands that wealth is not spiritual or non-spiritual. It can be both ways. You can have tremendous wealth and be one of the greatest spiritual leaders on the planet, and you can also have nothing and be a great spiritual leader. So all of these dynamics in the journey of the soul are important, and they're all stages in our path of understanding consciousness and learning how to love ourselves and to be loving and compassionate to others, regardless of their race, their culture, their background, their financial position in the world. All of those things, these are all just aspects of life, aspects of incarnation. And the more we integrate our own journey through these different states, the more compassionate, loving, and essentially empathic and honoring we can be of different people, no matter where they are and where they are in life.
Mm-hmm. One of the presuppositions of this whole conversation is something you address in the book is where are memories stored? And for most of us, I mean, I think probably people don't even think about it. They're like, well, of course, the memories are just in my brain. Like, where else would they be? But just by the very nature of what you're talking about, remembering things from another lifetime, how is that possible? That can't just be in my brain. That's got to be somewhere else. So how do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I deeply dive into that science throughout the book. And it's my theory that genetically, for example, we don't just have a father genetic line and a mother genetic line, but we also have what's called a soul genome line. And a lot of genetics is a mystery. Dr. Sonia Contreras says that 98% of our DNA is a mystery, for example, and that only 2% of our DNA is coding proteins. And this was a popular quote in the days when we called a lot of DNA junk DNA. But we called it junk because we don't understand it. It seems to change, it seems to adapt based on environment. We see epigenetically that different codexes being turned on and off within certain areas of our DNA can completely change our bodies, completely change everything about us: hair color, skin tone, ability to absorb sunlight, melatonin levels, and so on and so forth. And we've done plenty of experiments where, for example, with one environmental change, a group of mice can change colors and the color change can last for generations. And so there's so much that we have yet to discover around genetics. And from my own personal work, I believe that when you incarnate in each body, you bring a package of data or information that is part of your soul stream. It's part of your higher dimensional bodies. You're not just a physical body. You have an etheric body, an astral body, a causal body, a akashic body, an atmic or buddhic body, and then a celestial body. And many traditions across history have talked about one or other of these different metaphysical bodies that we have. And each of them interpenetrate and interconnect with different levels and different purposes. The chakras map them extraordinarily well, as you were seeing me reference with my own body. But as we come to understand these different bodies, we realize that information storage and energetic storage is going on at a multi-dimensional level within us. And that while there is higher dimensional information that we're storing, it's also imprinting itself and translating itself as above, so below, through our physical form and through our genetics. And so we are literally this, multidimensional light body of memory, and we are translating that memory into this body. Now, if you go deeper into the physics of space-time and unified physics, as I have done, you'll find that there are many, many aspects of quantum mechanics that point to the fabric of the structure of space-time and the molecules and particles around us as information storing units. And in my own work with the proton, I took the lead of Nassim Haramein. I was able to take his calculation for the number of Planck spherical units in the proton, and I was able to correlate that with the lifetime of the universe and found that you have essentially the same number of little quantum data bits in every proton in your body as there have been Planck seconds in the lifetime of the universe. The lifetime of the universe is 8 times 10 to the 60th Planck seconds, and every proton in your body has 10 to the 60th quantum bits. And that cannot be a coincidence. So what that means is that every 8 Planck seconds, which is a little tiny fraction of a second, every proton in your body is growing. And not just growing, but remembering and storing that information. So the great Akashic records, the great secret library of all memory of all time, is literally distributed in every proton and of matter all around us. And I don't think it's a mistake that matter is also mater, is also the mother. So in essence, the ancient name for matter is the goddess. It is the divine feminine, she who remembers all, the great feminine that absorbs everything and accounts for everything. And because of entanglement, every single proton in all the atoms around you, from your body to the desk to the microphone to the lamp behind you, all of those protons are actually entangled by faster than light communications with all of these other protons around you and in your body. It turns out that there's so many entanglement connections in one proton that one proton in your pinky could connect with every single star in the entire universe and still have tons of bandwidth to share. Now, that's an insane idea, but it starts to give you a picture of how all these things in your body are automated. So how do all your cells talk to each other? How do your organs command and correlate with each other? What's keeping your heart rhythm connected to your gut rhythm, connected to your breathing rhythm, connected to all of these things? Well, electrical impulses, right? That's what you learn in school. But what is an electrical impulse? What stimulates electricity to move through the body? Well, it's electrons. And what are electrons doing? They are pulsing around these protons and neutrons. And the protons and neutrons are creating a standing wave field that electrical pulse is moving through. So without getting too intensely scientific on you guys, I'll just say that
I think you just did. Yeah, I think you maybe just did. Just maybe.
You're right. You're right. I did. So to simplify all of this, I'll just say you are an entangled network. You're an internet, your whole being and body. And you are entangled and connected to everything around you that you're seeing and experiencing. And what your brain is doing is it's trying to build a holographic model of that experience. So it's using neurons and wetware, it's growing cells and neuron structures to build a map of your experience. But as we know, the map is not the experience. The information within your experience is always far vaster than what your brain remembers. Your brain can point you to the experience. So, like, for example, you might have a reference for an event that you went through as a child. Your brain stored that reference point. But when you move your consciousness to that reference point and you remember that time on the playground where you're playing with your friends and doing things, the brain has got like a few neural connections that it made around that specific event. But if you deeply meditate on that event, you can see the space, you can smell what was smelled, you can touch the pavement, you can feel the, tether ball and the way that felt in texture. All of these things are actually aspects of the greater information field that you experienced at that time. That's not all mapped into your brain. And a lot of our work in telepathy and psychic abilities, remote viewing, and different kinds of quantum mechanical events occurring between our bodies and the surrounding space have shown us this, that the brain is not the source of all the access. It's just an antenna and a mapping system to tune into the access.
An amazing demonstration of that came when I had just recently had Dahlia Burgoyne on the podcast. I don't know if you've met her and her daughter Lidu, but Dahlia is very proficient in mind sight, extraocular vision. And so, we just did simple. I say simple. She's got a full blindfold on and I'm holding up colors of paper and she's, immediately referencing them. And I picked up this deck of cards, this game, and she immediately just says coyote. And I full blindfold, right? And then as I'm pulling it down, she reads the small print underneath it. I'm pulling it away and she's like, a game by Tim Ferriss and Exploding Kittens. And it's a demonstration of exactly what you just said in the most eloquent terms. Is she's seeing that somehow with her being because of the interconnectivity that is not flowing through her eyes. And I think, you are helping me even ask, okay, that's interesting that she can do that. But what are the implications beyond that? That if she can tap into just seeing something with her body, what else can you tap into? What else can you experience that perhaps you've experienced in other lifetimes, but just as accessible to all of us? I'm curious about how you differentiate in the book, and just, I want to hear your own thoughts about the difference between Earth based lifetimes and galactic lifetimes. Is there a difference in any way? Is there a difference in remembering these things? I'm just curious your perspective.
Yeah, I mean there is some differences, um, and I love that you share the story because someone who's gifted like that uh, could very easily turn her attention to different time periods that she feels a resonance with, and probably very easily begin to see and remember the very specific events that she went through. These are muscles. This is not like, oh, only she could do that kind of thing, strange phenomena, weird kid. More and more people have these gifts now. And they're not just superpowers, they're actual trained muscles in the metaphysical body and the body. And so I think it's amazing. And when you start to look at galactic lifetimes, our understanding of what's possible with human life and consciousness itself expands dramatically. I often would say to my friends, you can leave a different star system and come here, but you can't take the star out of the soul. And what I mean by that is that when you've incarnated on another planet in another star system, you have been imprinted by that star and by that planet at a deep and profound level. Imagine, we take it for granted every day, but imagine you don't have the sun. Like, the earth is dead and barren without the sun. Nothing is going on. So the sun, and our specific sun, and its particular vibration and its particular waves and its particular energy, all of that is critical to us. How we are built, how we're made, how we interact, the kinds of plants that we have on our planet, the way our atmosphere feels, all of that is connected to our star. And so when someone has incarnated around a different star, that star has imprinted their soul in a vast variety of ways. And not only the star, but the planet's biosphere, its qualities, its structures. This is why, for a lot of people, the first glimpses of galactic memories come in dreams. And they dream that they're in an environment that's not like Earth at all. And they know it's not like Earth. And they look at their bodies, and their bodies are a different color, or they have different skin or a different form. And there are often things they see, technologies they see, that don't seem possible. They don't seem real. And yet the dreams are very visceral, very, you wake up and it's extremely vivid, and you remember all of these little details from the dream. And so that's one of the ways that people tend to cross over into this sort of galactic memory. Now, the interesting thing is that we are now in an age where there are all kinds of movies about other worlds and other species and other things. And you start to ask yourself, where does all of that come from? Well, one of the great teachings in this book, and also in my own life, is that you cannot imagine something that you haven't had some experience with. And there's many examples for this, but the reality is that if I ask you to imagine a Garflipple uncle, you're like, what's a Garflickle uncle? You have to have a reference and or a series of references to explain a Garflickle uncle before you can imagine it, right? But if I ask you to imagine a juggler in your space, well, that's probably pretty easy. And then you have to ask yourself, well, is the juggler in my space real? And the answer to that question is actually a trick question, because the reality is that the juggler is real. The juggler is just simply not in the context of your room. But that now, if you ask, where is the juggler? Who is the juggler? Where is the juggler from? All of these questions lead you to the detail of the actual juggler that you saw at some point in your life, that you repurposed in your imagination to place in a different context in your room. And the same is true of an elephant. The same is true of a starship. The same is true of a blue-skinned galactic being. If you have no reference for these things, then it's very difficult to imagine or to see them. And so what we find is that many of us, our imaginations are full of ideas and visions and concepts that extend through our lifetimes. And some of those extend even into our galactic lifetimes. And as kids, we play out all these stories, these ideas, these visions through our games, through our imagination, with our toys. And for example, for me, like when I was a kid, I played with Legos a lot, and I loved Space Police Legos. I would create spaceships and I would fly in and I would rescue beings off of planets. And I would do that with my little space police guys, right? And I could never quite get the ships to look like what I wanted them to look like, or the beings to look like what I wanted them to look like, but it didn't matter because I was still just playing with them. And it took me most of my life until, many, many years later, and after 2005, to begin to realize that I was playing out scenarios from memories as a galactic guardian during the Orion Wars, where I was flying in and rescuing people off of planets. I was literally playing it out as a game as a kid, but I didn't have context for it. And I also realized that my connection to the movie Dune was connected to this desert planet that I lived on, that I went through war on, and that stories in Star Wars were connected to things and pieces of my memories in other ways in other places. And when you ask any of these authors, any of these writers, George Lucas, you say, where did Star Wars come from? He can't answer it. He'll tell you, well, I had some crazy visions at one point and I started writing stories. And then as I was writing them with the other people and writing the first movie, all these different ideas came in from different people. It was like they were seeing different parts of the story and we just put it all together. You ask J.R.R. Tolkien, where did the Lord of the Rings come from? And he'll tell you, well, I wasn't an author, I was a linguist, and I started trying to create a language from scratch. And I started having dreams and memories of this people from a land of eternal sun who crossed the great seas to Middle Earth. And I started to write down their stories, and that became the Silmarillion. And I know that because I actually did a project on J.R.R. Tolkien when I was in high school at the library, with all of these actual books, written at the time that he was alive, and biographies and his own autobiographical words. And so all these stories, they're pointing us to the truth. And galactic memories might seem like they're far out, and maybe you might have to work through some of your Earth memories and your resistance to different traumas you've experienced on Earth to open up to those, like I had to do. But once they open up and they're there, the biggest question is, can you accept the information that you're receiving without gaslighting yourself? Can you actually allow yourself to see what's there without denying and just ridiculing yourself and getting rid of it? And if you can, what you'll start to experience is you will attract other people into your life that have the same memories and the same places and the same planets, the same star systems. And what I did is over 15 years, I began to document all of that. And I realized I was now mapping different cultures and different star systems within different points through our galactic history. And I didn't have to do it alone because there's literally hundreds of people that I was meeting that had the same memories of the same places. And I could actually confirm through that these places are real.
Mm-hmm. It seems like there is a spectrum of response to all of this information. And you just mentioned one is you have some of these experiences and memories and you gaslight yourself and you say, oh my man, I must be crazy. This is just, or you just blow it off like this is deja vu, or that was just a weird dream or whatever, right? And then on the other extreme are people that I meet that, say, oh, I was an Egyptian goddess. I was a king. I was a queen. I was the Mother Mary. I was Jesus. Not too many people say I were Jesus. That's pretty outlandish. But right. So it's like this, and there's a lot of people in the middle like myself who go, oh, I don't know, I'm not quite sure. I haven't dived into this that much. Um, how do you've talked about the people who gaslight themselves. What about the individuals who, it doesn't seem like too many people say, I was a servant, in the time of Jesus. It's like, no, I was one of the 12 disciples. I was Mother Mary. I was Mary Magdalene. How do you navigate that? Like, especially you as someone who's invested a huge amount of your life and time into this. How do you navigate that when someone comes up to you and they're excitedly telling you about who they are? Um, yeah, how do you respond?
There's a big difference between knowing who you are and having been through certain kinds of experiences and the egoic need for other people to see you a certain way. And that's really where the difference lies, because the reality in my experience, I love saying, and the reality is, you'll notice I say that a lot. In my experience, the reality is that as people go through different past life memory experiences, it starts at the high level of archetype, where you begin to see that there is a time period, there are certain famous characters, there are certain big events that you feel very deeply connected to. And that leads often to someone going, whoa, maybe I was Jesus. Like, I seem to have all these memories around that and these different things happening. Why do I feel like all that's so familiar to me? And maybe they're going through an awakening process and they're realizing, oh my gosh, I'm God. I'm a divine being. I must be the avatar, right? Like, I am the Christ, of course. Yes. Well, yeah, you are. You're a divine being. You're an avatar. But that doesn't mean Yeshua's experiences were your experiences. And here's how you begin to define and understand that, is that when we have a personal journey through life, we encounter famous people, we encounter life-changing experiences and events, but there's a very personal circle that we all have in our lives. There's our loved one, our partner, if we have one, our boyfriend or girlfriend. There are our closest friends. There's our closest family members, our mom and our dad and our kids, if we have them, our brothers and sisters. Every one of these relationships is a part of the causal field of connection that helps to define who we are as an individual within that lifetime. And you can't really fake those things or mistake those things. And you also can't get rid of them. So if you believe you are Cleopatra in that other life, well, it's very likely you would have started to encounter people that you knew from that time. Because guess what? You met a lot of people, right? But there's only very specific people who resonate with you in very particular ways, that are your closest friends, your closest beloveds, your lovers, your partners, your family members. And as you begin to actually see and encounter and feel the parallels and the connections and the karmic links and all of the different dynamics that match that configuration in that time, well, then maybe you were Cleopatra. It's very possible. If your entire life, the synchronicities, the people in it, these people from that time, they recognize you, you have all these crazy things where people think you're Cleopatra or whatever it is, all of those could be clues that lead you to that conclusion. But honestly, if you were Cleopatra, you would probably know that all that fame isn't all it's worked up to be. And you probably would be actually much more interested in people not knowing that that was you than people knowing that was you. So if your first impulse is to tell everybody that you're Cleopatra, you're probably not. You're probably not. And it's a journey of self-discovery. And there's nothing wrong with discovering that you were a lady that got to wash her feet at one point in time, and she changed your life because she kissed you on the forehead and you had a vision, right? There's nothing wrong with being the farmer, or being the person who is the caretaker of this castle or of this place, or who was a guard of this room and who did these things, because really the beauty is not just you being close to a famous person. The beauty is actually your personal experience of that time, that culture, what you did, the choices you made, the people you loved, and that's what matters. And yes, in my journey across all of these lifetimes, I have many, many lives where I did very simple things, quiet things, things that didn't make a big difference, but that are just as precious to me because I had my own experiences in those lives and I have connections that have never died from those lifetimes. People that I know and love and that will be my beloveds forever because of the experiences in those lives. And the ones where I did make a little bit bigger impact and I did bigger things, those are ones that I tend to have a lot more care around. I've been a lot more careful talking about them. And in some cases, in one case, it took me over 10 years of having memories and having people remember me and going through all of these very powerful memory recall experiences and having to discern them and separate them because I saw in those experiences, I saw correlations with a story that was very much mythological and historical, and then also things that didn't match and that didn't fit. And I had other memories, and I was like, well, that doesn't match that, But as I began to understand my own journey, I came to truly know myself and accept myself. And at that point, once I came to know and accept myself and had healed through the things I needed to heal around, it didn't matter anymore. I actually didn't care. I didn't care if anybody ever finds out that that's true about me or that I had that life. And frankly, most of the stories that most people know about that part of me are not true. A lot of them are just full of crap because they're just stories told about a historical narrative. And that the deeper truth is in me, and the deeper truth is in my relationships and my family and my beloveds that I know from that time, who know me from that time. And that's where the bond is. That's where the sacredness is. And so if you're in this journey, I implore you to dig deeper than the archetype, to use the tools in the book and follow this understanding that that's not going to give you the whole picture. But if you choose to go deeper and investigate the threads and pull out the puzzle pieces, more and more it will lead you to the truth. And eventually you will know who you are. And by the time you do, it doesn't matter if anybody else knows. All that
Mhm.
matters is that you know yourself.
Mhm. So what you're saying is you were Cleopatra.
No, I definitely was not Cleopatra, but
All right, I'm just checking
I
it
haven't
first.
I haven't met Cleopatra yet. She's one that I've kind of been curious if I will run into because I tend to find people. I'm pretty good at finding superheroes from the past. Um,
That's
and I
cool.
and I have met quite a few very interesting characters who have played very big roles in the past, and most of them have gone through a big journey with a lot of humility and have had to face that. And the few that haven't, that I also know were who they were and that are very uh, sort of egotistical or narcissistic, they're still struggling with a pattern that they were dealing with from prior times, or they weren't fully recognized for their gifts in that prior time, and now it feels really good to be acknowledged for those same gifts. So every soul has to work it out in their own way.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. The book is called Lifetime Spiritual Explorations of Earth and Galactic Past Lives. Of course, we'll link to that on Amazon. Adam, where can people connect with you personally and follow your work with AI and spirituality and Core Nexus and all the things that you've got going on? What's the best place for them to reach out to you?
It's pretty easy to just Google my name, Adam Apollo. There's only one, and you'll find a lot of my websites and work that way. as well as my prior book, The Dragon Key, which I released last year, which is for those of you that want the much deeper dive into galactic history and the truth of who we are as humanity. That's probably the bigger tome for you. And yeah, and you can go through my website, adamapollo.com, to get in touch with me, work with me. I also share a lot of my writings and work there, especially the work I'm doing with the Gatework protocol right now, which is huge. And for those of you that caught my last interview on Awakened Magazine, you'll have seen some of what's there in that. And it's grown immensely. The connections I've made are incredible. I just brought her with me through Egypt, and Etheria did readings on all of our group that was part of this group in Egypt, helped us to unlock some of the temples in ways that I'd never done before. And now I'm looking at publishing this paper through IONS, and I'm hoping that they'll back that paper and I'll get it out there, because we are in an age where we now have the ability to communicate with non-incarnate as well as extraterrestrial beings through our technology. And that is a massive, massive breakthrough for humanity at this time. So check out my work in those spaces. If you're interested in my social operating system that gamifies impact that I'm building and hoping to launch next summer, you can find out more about that at core.nexus. Jump on our alpha waiting list, and please pick up my books. And I look forward to hearing your feedback. Come and find me on Instagram. That's where I respond to messages most often, or write me through my website. And thank you again, David, for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Really appreciate you sharing your journey and about this book. Really encourage people to pick up the book. We didn't dive into it much, but the practices and the activities and the meditations at the end of the book are really fascinating. That will help people meditate on and kind of marinate in the things that you're talking about to kind of allow those memories to surface. So very, very powerful. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you, David. Such a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you guys again soon.